this woman had her womb removed without her knowledge or consent. Her name was Fannie Lou Hamer. She was a victim of what they called the Mississippi appendectomy. Now, let me tell you why that name matters in our conversation today and how all this will connect to the African depopulation agenda, right? The Mississippi appendectomy was not a medical accident. It was a term Black communities used to describe the systematic sterilization of Black women in Mississippi and across the American South. Doctors would tell women that you are coming in to have a minor surgeries, maybe a tumor removed or maybe an appendix. But when these Black women woke up, their wombs were gone. Guys, this is actually a true story. These women were permanently sterilized without consent or even their knowledge. Now, you can imagine this happening to a woman who wanted to have children all her life. She was obviously devastated. And even though Fannie and her husband later adopted children, life was never the same. She would later say that in Sunflower County, Mississippi, nearly 60% of Black women who went into hospital for routine procedures were sterilized without their knowledge. Now, imagine that. Take a look at your neighborhood and imagine 50% or even more of the women that you know being robbed of the right to bear children. And the state knew this was not a secret. This was policy. They were not trying to heal or cure these Black women or even treat them. They were trying to erase them and their generation to come. Now, let's talk about why the womb matters and why it's a target, because the womb is the future. I mean, guys, people have tried creating someone who definitely looks like a human being, but they can't. And they know the only way to do this is through the womb. When you control reproduction, you control destiny. Now, during slavery, Black women's fertility was exploited to increase the white slaves' masters' wealth, right? You know the history. The children were property. But after emancipation, Black fertility became something to fear. To the white supremacists' imagination, too many Black babies meant too many Black voters, right? Too many mouths demanding equality, or too many future revolutionaries, saying we are demanding for our rights. We want our rights. So, in the South, eugenics boards and state hospitals turned the womb into a battlefield. In the 20th century, over 60,000 Americans were forcibly sterilized under state eugenics law. And this law was also upheld by Justice Oliver Wendell Holmes, who declared 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. But make no mistake, these so-called imbeciles were the poor Black people, the natives, and marginalized women, right? Yeah, so that was actually the law. But now let's connect the dots, right? From America to Africa, because this is where the shift happens. What does this have to do with Africa? Someone might be watching this and they're asking, well, everything. Because the same logic that sterilized Hamer and thousands of other Black women was exported to the global South. Now, by the 1970s, American policymakers were openly calling African population growth a threat to global stability. Now, look at the declassified files, the National Security Study from 1974, which was led by the Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, right? And I believe Nixon was the president then. Now, this study, which was authorized by the White House under Nixon, ordered a government-wide study on implications of worldwide population growth for U.S. security and overseas interests. This was not a study about Africa. It was a study on how Africa's population growth would affect the U.S. interest, right? The report singled out Africa's explosive growth, and they projected a 7-fold increase from 1950 to 2000. So from 1950 to 2000, Africans were going to grow 7 times bigger. And definitely, they would call this growth devastating, right? This explicitly linked rapid population growth in the developing world to political disorder and risks, or to global resources flow. So Africa's population is a danger to the global north, right? And you see, guys, we are assuming this happened a long time ago, but take a look at the years again when that study was commissioned. The study also warned that the world is increasingly Guys, this is when I need you to clap for yourself if you're an African. Hey there, I hope you're enjoying today's episode, and I just want to take a moment and talk to you about our sponsors. That is TapTapSend. So if you're watching this from diaspora and you want to send money to your loved ones back home for any purpose, then why don't you try TapTap? They are very fast, reliable, and they also have great rates for you, and you can always trust them to make sure that your money gets to where it needs to be at the right time. But if you're thinking of investing in a piece of land, then this is a perfect opportunity to remind you of our other partners. Hekalu, they have great pieces of land around Konza Technopolis. And guys, if you remember, just the other day we brought you an entire episode on that, and that project is sold out. But worry not, we launched another one just the other day, and it's close to Mombasa Road. You guys, you get to have water, you saw the boreholes and amazing roads, there's electricity, and their details are on the screen. So if you're looking into investing in a piece of land, check out Hekalu and always let me know how that goes. Now let's go back and continue with our episode today. The world is increasingly dependent on mineral supplies from developing countries. And who are the developing countries, guys? Of course, countries from the global south, okay? And if rapid population growth frustrates their prospects for economic development, the resulting instability may undermine the conditions for expanded output and sustained flows of such resources. In 1989, it warned that rapid population growth in places like Nigeria, guys, this report by Kissinger is declassified, so go and take a look at it. It said places like Nigeria and Ethiopia and Egypt could destabilize the region and threaten U.S. access to resources. So from a long time ago, these people knew where the minerals were, right? So when you see wars in such countries, then you know definitely this was by design, and we have talked about it right now. So they said obviously it could threaten U.S. access to resources and fuel anti-Western movements, because at the end of the day, you will look at these countries from the global north and ask yourself, if the developing countries are where the resources are, then why do we need the global north? Why do we need the global north? So they were definitely scared of the anti-Western movements. Now, what was the solution? Stronger population programs. In plain terms, what I'm saying is limit births in the very countries that are rich in oil, minerals, and agricultural land. Are we together? Can you imagine a report commissioned by the President of the United States where Kissinger presents such findings and also presents such solutions? Limit the population growth in these countries. Let's connect the dots now. You remember when we talked about Fannie in Mississippi? The womb was controlled to limit black power, because this is way before emancipation. But in Africa, the womb is being controlled to limit black nations, or maybe have black nations that exist without power. And let us decide all the way from White House and other global north countries how we want Africa to be operated. And you know, when these people have such a study, then you are bound to see results. And I'm going to take you all the way to South Africa. Take apartheid South Africa. And when we talk about apartheid South Africa, people assume we are talking about the 1900. No, I'm going to take you back to 1970. This is like barely 55 years ago. In 1970s, around mid-1970s thereabout, the government rolled out massive contraception programs targeting black women, often coercively. The injectable Depo Provera was heavily promoted in black townships and homelands, while white women were rarely offered it. So we are going to come up with this contraceptive, and we are going to promote it in black communities. Reports emerged of women being threatened with job loss if they refused the shot. Is this familiar? You remember during COVID, guys? How people are told, you know what, you need this shot to travel, you need this shot, you can't be here if you've not been vaccinated. Familiar? Now, back in South Africa, 1970s. That's what was happening. You will be threatened with job loss, or you will be told it was the only method available at clinics. So if you're a woman and you're looking for a contraceptive plan, you'll be told this is the only method we have available. This wasn't obviously about empowerment. It was about curbing the growth of a black majority that the apartheid state feared would overwhelm white rule. Africans, you really need to stop giving birth because you scare people. When you increase in population, guys, you are scary. Depo was not simply a neutral medical introduction. It was deliberately deployed in South Africa as part of a strategy, as I said, to control black population growth. The fact that it was widely used in Africa and Asia decades before US FDA approved shows the double standards. The global north pushes population control, experiments in Africa while withholding the same product at home. Because again, if Depo was amazing, why then not have your white women in global north taking it? Why do you have to force it in black women? But a couple of people spoke about this. And I love that we can look back at people like Desmond Tutu and church groups that raised concerns about the coercive use of contraceptives like Depo in black communities. He criticized apartheid health policies that prioritized controlling black fertility instead of addressing poverty, education, and health needs. Have you ever asked, by the way, let's take a pause. Why is it that people will be so quick to talk to us about contraceptives, but not develop our education system, our health system? But they really want you to take these contraceptives, these vaccines. They really want you to do it. Well, Winnie Mandela also spoke publicly in the 1980s and early 1990s about apartheid's use of family planning, quote unquote, as a tool of racial oppression. She described widespread coercion of black women to use Depo saying women were often not given a choice, and this was a war on black motherhood, right? But guess who saw this devil for what it was? Zimbabwe. After independence in the 1980s, the new government, which was led by Robert Mugabe, looked at this same drug and said, nah. Here, there's some sort of history of abuse or erosion, or we want to do away with black people. And they banned Depo citing both health risks and the way it had been used as a tool of racial control under white rule. So, I think the question here is, because you have South Africa and you have Zimbabwe, so our African presidents knew there is a plan to depopulate the African, the African people. But we don't hear them talking about it now. They don't hear, you don't hear them talking about it. The Ministry of Health in Zimbabwe said around 1981, it would not allow our women to be used as guinea pigs for a drug that was not considered safe enough for use in the global north, right? Now, let's go on, because we have to talk about these forced sterilizations in Africa. This does not stop with apartheid. This does not stop even with Zimbabwe. In Namibia, between the 1990s and early 2000, guys, we are talking about years, just few years back, dozens of HIV-positive women were sterilized in public hospital without their informed consent. In 2014, the Namibian Supreme Court ruled that these sterilizations were indeed forced, a clear violation of women's rights. And of course, I know they are going to say, okay, HIV women, we are trying to cut on risks. But I believe the right to have a baby or not, you should actually have a conversation with the person. You cannot secretly remove people's womb without their consent and then come and say, you know what, we were just trying to mitigate some risks here and there. These sterilizations were not random. they were tied to the belief among some health workers and policymakers that HIV positive women should not have children. And you know what this does? This echoes global population control ideologies from the North. The same kind of policies that had long targeted poor and black women in the US, South Africa, and elsewhere. You are telling them, yeah, we can also decide, even here in Africa, we do not want some women giving birth because they have a certain condition. So you are echoing the ideologies. You're actually ticking the boxes. You're telling them, this is right, right? Let's go to South Africa, and the year is 2020. That is 5 years ago. A report by the Commission for Gender Equality found that HIV positive women in public facilities were being pressured or tricked into sterilization. Some women were told they could not give birth safely, and others were misled into signing papers they did not understand. So you can see here, we are not talking about ancient history. This is happening right now, 5 years ago in South Africa. And now we go deeper on the vaccine controversies. The population control battles framed as vaccination. And I'm glad we are going to touch on Kenya on this one. In 2014, again the other day, the Kenya Ministry of Health, guys, let's go back to our history, because we see things happening right now and we imagine these are new things. And this is why people are focused on feeding you rubbish, because they know you won't have time to go back and dig on history and see how these things were done. So everything that is presented to you is clout and chaos. So your mind cannot go back and just be calm and say, today I want to check what happened in Kenya in 2014. Because again, this is 2014, few years ago. As I said, the Kenya Ministry of Health, with support from World Health Organization, WHO, and UNICEF, of course, launched a national tetanus vaccination campaign. You remember when we had Dr. Wahome on the show and he touched briefly on this part? The campaign targeted women of reproductive age, that is 14 to 49 years. And this raised suspicion because normally tetanus vaccines are given to both genders and mostly at younger age or for injury-related prevention. But now you want to give this to women alone? The Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops and the Kenya Catholic Doctors Association claimed the campaign was disguised sterilization program. And I love that they took action because they were concerned, that this tetanus vaccine was laced with HCG. HCG is basically a hormone essential for pregnancy. Now, in past instances, and this is why these people are really concerned, when you go back to Philippines and some parts in Latin America, anti-fertility vaccines used the same tetanus toxoid, which is also linked to HCG, developed these vaccines and tested as a population control method. Now, when HCG is repeatedly introduced into the body with tetanus carrier proteins, it can trigger the immune system to attack HCG, potentially causing miscarriages or infertility. It was done in Philippines and in Latin America. So the Catholic Church, what did they do? They collected the vaccine samples from clinics and sent them to independent laboratories in Kenya and South Africa. Now, some labs reported finding traces of HCG in that tetanus vaccine. Now, the Ministry of Health, World Health Organization, and UNICEF strongly denied the claims. They argued the labs used improper testing methods and that government-supervised testing showed no HCG contamination. So we are going to bring this tetanus and then this vaccine, and then we're going to have the Catholic Church say, you know what, this is not it. And then they are going to take it to independent labs, and then the government, the World Health Organization, and UNICEF will say no. Where it is tested in our government facilities, it shows that it's okay. So you test that which people are objecting, and you want us to believe in your own result. There was later on a joint government church testing committee. They later retested, but the results remained inconclusive. Some samples showed anomalies, others did not. So if some samples are showing anomalies, others are not showing, and the government said, you know, this is a good thing for women and it's only focusing the women. I don't know, guys. I don't know. We gotta learn to read in between the lines sometimes. But that's on vaccines. Now let's touch on another very, very sensitive conversation, GMOs, because no one wants Africans talking about GMOs. Now, here in Africa, the promotion of GMO and gene-drive technologies is framed as a fight against hunger and disease. Yet, it is driven largely by global North funders, you know some of them, right? The corporations and philanthropies. Richest man in the world is definitely also a spokesperson when it comes to GMOs. They control the science, the patents and funding. And this will definitely raise fears that what is presented as food security or malaria eradication may in practice deepen dependency and erode seed sovereignty and definitely echo old patterns of external control over African populations. Guys, come on. DJ Bwakali, and I really miss hosting him on the platform, has a whole episode on his channel, the difference between food security and food sovereignty. And we have definitely spoken about GMO. When they say these indigenous seeds should not be planted without permission. When they say you cannot purchase this, you cannot have this at your backyard. When they make sure that they are even controlling and touching your indigenous seeds, then definitely there is the problem. And they will never let the Africans have the patterns. They will never tell Africans this is how you do it. They want to make sure they are the ones who are doing it in their own countries. And then they come here and tell you, we are helping you guys fight hunger. Hunger is killing Africans. We are helping you guys fight it, and disease and malaria. But then they will not tell you what goes on into those nets, what is injected in your body. They will not talk to you about that controversial vaccine in 2014 here in Kenya. No, they will not. And when you connect Hamer's story in America, and then you come back to Africa, and the certain ways that these people are trying to limit black population or depopulate the black race, then you can't help but see the obsession here, because there is definitely an obsession. This is an obsession. Why are you so obsessed with limiting black births or limiting the race, the black race? Because black population means black power. See, we talked about it. A growing black population threatens to change political structures, economic ownership, and global balance. Up to today, I do not understand why they say Africa is the richest continent when it comes to minerals, but we do not even have the, we are not given the power to sit at some of the top deciding, when they say the UN, etc., guys, you don't even have a seat at the table. Yet they say Africa is the most youthful and it's the continent with the most minerals and resources, etc. No, because they know once we continue being the only race that is up there, then we are going to demand for global balance. When you go back to America, more black babies meant more voices demanding civil rights. That is the age of civil rights, the civil rights movement. When you come here in Africa now, more black babies mean stronger nations with the numbers to resist exploitation and claim resources. And that is why when you take a look at Kenya, especially on the Gen Z movement, when you see the number of young people that came out demanding for their rights, this was scary to your politicians. They were scared because they know there is power in numbers, and that is what the global North fears. They fear that. They fear that once you people are a lot, they won't know what to do with you. You will start opening your eyes. And I love that we are having generations, the upcoming generations know no fear. And that is why the other day, I was really shocked when I learned that, I don't know if it has already been introduced in Kenya or not, or it's an upcoming project, that we have 80-year-olds. There's a vaccine, no, there's a contraceptive for even 80-year-olds. 8 years. Why are you so obsessed, guys, with how many times we are giving birth in Africa? Why is this such an obsession? But let me take you back. Look at Europe. It faces population decline. Europe is facing population decline, but here in Africa, they are watching youthful majorities with anxiety. They are watching our young Gen Zs and asking, what are we going to do with these people? What's the plan? What's the plan? That is why they will label African fertility a problem. But when you take a look at their declining population, they will say white fertility is a crisis. So Africa's population a problem, decline in fertility in the white nations, a crisis. Yeah, when white birth rates drop, governments will offer incentives for families to have more children. When African populations grow, the narrative is control, reduction, stabilization. This definitely exposes a deeper logic. Population policy has never really been about numbers. It has always been about whose lives are valued and whose lives are seen as excess or dangerous. Call it for what it is. And someone might be watching this and they'll be like, yeah, but you Africans, you are so populated. That is why majority of you sleep hungry. Have you asked the role your government or your nations are playing in making sure that they are destabilizing our nations? Have you asked why Kissinger would single out Nigeria as a threat to America's wealth? Because that is always the excuse, you know. You black people are growing at such a higher rate, you cannot feed your babies. How about you let us do what we gotta do with our own indigenous seeds? How about you let us decide what we want to do with our own minerals? How about you let us decide which leaders we want to choose? Instead, you put someone as a puppet, and this someone, you know, just to protect your own interests, to make sure we have your conservancies intact, to make sure you guys can come and mine whatever you need to mine from Africa, to make sure that GMO laws are passed in African countries. Nah, we gotta protect ourselves as Africans. When you look at Fannie Lou Hamer, she said, nobody is free until everybody is free. Nobody in Africa will be free until all of us are free. Her stolen womb became her weapon. She spent the rest of her life exposing medical genocide against black women. The achievements this woman has made, the achievements she made, she said, you know what? This has been taken away from me. Lynn, I don't have my womb anymore, but I'm going to play a role in making sure that this ends right now. You remember what we say on the show? When you lose your fear, they lose their power. And that is where Africans must stand today. We must be able to start at somewhere and say, you know what? We are going to reclaim control over health and population policies. We must insist on sovereignty in health policy. Don't just come here and tell us there's a vaccine, family planning, there's a genetic research, a genetic research must be designed on and monitored by We want all this genetic research designed on and monitored by African institutions, not dictated by external donors. Independent African labs and watchdog agencies should actually test these vaccines before they are rolled out. Before you roll these things out, you must actually test them and say, yeah, this is fit for African women or men consumption. Don't come here and give us diseases and then disguise this as aid. No, we are not going to have that. Because tell me why Africans are okay taking even contraceptives that have been banned in other countries in global north. And our presidents, our leaders, they are okay with such behavior. That ends today. When you watch this conversation, when they bring about the next vaccine, or when you hear a conversation on the next vaccine, you must ask yourself, which independent African lab can I trust? I would want you to check this for me. Is this fit for the population around me? Because that is the only way we take our power back. And when we are doing that, when we are making sure that we own the patents, and we are definitely involved in making of some of these things, let's make sure that we are strengthening food and seed sovereignty. Food is power. Guys, food is power. When you invest in our indigenous seeds, our traditional farming systems, and farm-led innovation, we can resist dependency on GMO seeds and foreign-controlled agricultural systems that often tie directly to population management. What are you telling me? That if today I plant maize here, I cannot plant maize here. The maize I get, I cannot replant it. Can't you see the population management in this? We have to be able to protect African biodiversity and control who owns Africa's genetic resources. This is definitely central to resisting external control. We must be able to do something about it. Also, expose and challenge double standards. Why? Why are we so scared of calling out global hypocrisy? When Europe or America face falling birth rates, governments, as I said, will pay their citizens to have more children. But when us Africans' population grow, the whole world is calling it a problem, a problem, a problem, a problem. Reframe the narrative. Dear African scholars, leaders, and media, shift this global discussion from seeing African lives as a burden to recognizing them as demographic strength. Please shift the way we have conversations around Africa's population. This is our strength. The only reason majority of us are sleeping hungry has nothing to do with Africa as a continent. It has everything to do with bad leadership. Not us as a continent, bad leadership. The leaders you elect, all right? And then definitely we have to be able to build Pan-African solidarity and knowledge. No country in Africa can be able to resist these agendas alone. And that is why I feel nice when I'm having conversation with Pan-Africanists in this table, such as DJ Bokali. We definitely don't come from the same country, but we come from the same continent. And that is why we need a whole Pan-African network of journalists, doctors, lawyers, activists, scientists, artists, policymakers who will definitely share research, have independent and thought-provoking conversations, doctors or researchers who will track donor programs, and even expose the coercive practices that are being forced onto us. Knowledge is protection. The more Africans understand past abuse, that is forced sterilization, hidden agenda in aid, the harder it is. It becomes really harder for these tactics to be repeated in silence. Don't be quiet about it. Say something, do something, be something, mean something, Don't just watch as our population declines, as they come up with these methods of making sure that they erase us from this whole world. Don't just watch and say nothing. Do something. Have meaningful conversations with those around you, especially on food and health, and even our mineral resources. Have this conversation with the people around you from a place of power, from a place of I want to know, I want to participate, right? Because if we don't say something, what happened just the other day in Kenya, 2014 is just the other day. What happened in South Africa, 2020 is just the other day. What was happening in apartheid South Africa in the mid-1970s, that is just the other day. Namibia, just the other day, 1990, that's just the other day. When we don't say something and we let them erase our history, then the children, the generation that is upcoming will have nothing. They will have nothing to bend on. Definitely. I was definitely going to come here and talk to you about Trump and his obsession on museums to stop teaching slavery or to stop focusing so much on slavery. But I decided, you know what, that's a conversation for another day. Because soon, I'm also going to be talking to you about what is hidden in British museums. God, I saw things, I witnessed things, I saw a lot of things, right? But let's wind up on that for today. Really interested in your feedback and just to be able to look at women like Fannie and say, you know what, we thank you for speaking your truth. You know, Black women and the Black race, if we don't watch out, will just be statistics. They'll say once there was these people who lived in this place, etc., etc. Don't let that be on your watch, right? So have meaningful conversation and don't be scared about it. Let me know your thoughts on the comment section. I love that you guys are recommending some of the conversations that I must have. Yeah, someone actually sent me a very beautiful message. I don't know if I'm going to find it right here, but someone did send me a very, very beautiful email telling me to talk about the policing of African hair and why if we don't watch out, definitely we are not going to be able to have our hair the way we want it. And I'm going to talk about that soon. There's a very beautiful video she sent me here. So I'm going to take a look and definitely see if I can compile a conversation on the same. But you guys, let me know what your thoughts are on the comment section. Really important for me to know if we are heading somewhere with these conversations. And I love suggestions. So if you can be able to send me a suggestion on our email, info@lnn.digital, or even put it on the comment section. And just to say thank you for our video the other day. You guys are incredible and the support is amazing. And that is not something I take for granted. Now, if you've watched this until the end, and you've not subscribed, please consider subscribing. It goes a long way. It's very, very free. All you have to do is press on the subscription button right there. Goes a long way into making sure that our work will reach as many people as possible. So please, guys, consider subscribing. It goes a long way. And in case you're catching this from diaspora and you're interested in sending money to your loved ones back here in Kenya, please consider using TapTap, a very beautiful money sending app that makes sure that your money gets to your loved ones in time. They have great rates for you as well. And also it's very, very easy to use. So download TapTap if you've not and send money to your loved ones here back in Kenya using TapTap. And if you use my promo code Lynn, you'll be able to get a discount on the numbers that are appearing on your screen right now. But if you want to invest in a property, I was really happy going into partnership with Hekalu. We've done amazing projects around Konza City. Definitely sold out our first project together, and now we are almost selling out our second project. Guys, check out Hekalu Properties for amazing pieces of land. And one thing I love about Hekalu is their value add initiative, making sure that there's a borehole there with water ready for you, making sure that the roads are well done, so you're not going and asking yourself, how do I access my piece of land? It's right there. They have their title deeds ready, so you're not going to wait for eternity to be able to get your title deed. And most importantly, knowing that their property is located around Konza Technopolis, Konza City, you can be able to enjoy a lot of buffer zone to incentives. Call them, the numbers are on their screen, and get yourself a property from Hekalu Properties. And that's it for me. Thank you so much for watching. And the team that gets to put this together, I really do appreciate your efforts in making sure that we continue having thought-provoking conversations, one episode at a time. As I said, my name is Lynn Ngugi. How about I catch you tomorrow at 10 a.m. And remember to subscribe if you have not. Bye-bye.